Parental estrangement is not something that we openly talk about. And I also know that it's one of those things that boomers are having a hard time understanding because they think that it's more of a fad and a trend. It's been happening for a long time. We just have social media now, so it's a lot more obvious. How many of us have that Aunt Sue in the family who moved away and never talked to the family again? In all reality, generational trauma has long been an issue and is something that we've swept under the rug and not really talked about. But the world is changing. Our world is evolving. We are awakening to something new. And there are a lot of us who want more, who want something different. I want to share with you my personal journey of going into contact with my entire family. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you the very surprising outcome of this entire situation that honestly, if you would have told me this was the outcome, I would have told you that you're a bold-faced liar. Because I'm like, no way. There's no way. So with that being said, let's jump into the story. So most of my life, I struggled with boundaries with relationships. I didn't understand what a healthy relationship was. If you're not familiar with attachment styles, I would highly encourage that you do some research on it. Someday I'll do some more videos on it. Attachment style is how we relate to other people. I had a very anxious attachment style, meaning that I was terrified of being left. I was terrified of rejection. I was terrified of feeling abandoned. It was because I had a lot of emotional neglect growing up in my family. There was no attention. There was no affection. I didn't understand what a healthy relationship even looked like. So what happens when you have that type of dynamic as a child, you repeat it in your relationships, in your career, in everything that you do. So I didn't understand that. But as I grew older, I kept repeating the same relationship dynamics, and it was really painful. This contributed to a lot of the trauma that I endured even as I got older, because what happens is when you have childhood trauma, it keeps piling up until you resolve it. Because what happens is you're creating the same cycles over and over and over in different periods of your life. So childhood trauma creates a core, a foundation of really difficult and toxic patterns. You take that into your college years, you take that into your marriage, you take that into your career. So then when you start to heal, you have to peel away all of those different layers because you've built a life of trauma. Fast forward into my life, it was roughly 38 years old when my body had completely shut down after a long list of health issues, IBS, endometriosis, herniated disc. Did I mention IBS? GERD? Yeah, the list is long. Anyways, my body had started to shut down. Doctors couldn't tell me why. I had numbness in my feet. It started with my toes, and then progressively over the months, it kept going up my feet. And then it went into my hands. And then eventually, I could barely move. And then I would just pass out randomly. Doctors didn't know what was wrong. They had given me the max dosages of basically every medication possible out there. And they're like, we're sorry, we're out of medication and we don't know what's wrong. Sorry about your luck. That's kind of what it felt like. So it took over a year for me to finally get a diagnosis for this new condition, and I was diagnosed with functional neurological disorder, which I will do another video specifically on that. But it's a condition where your nervous system starts to react because of years and years of, in my case, emotional trauma and stress. So at 38, I was diagnosed with functional neurological disorder. My life was, that's what it felt like. I was at the lowest of the low when I didn't think that I could be that low. When I became a widow at 24, that's as low as it can get, right? That's as hard as it could possibly get. No, I had left my job as the VP of marketing. I had spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder to reach the pinnacle of what I felt like was success as a VP of marketing for an e-learning company. I was really proud of my position. And then I had to walk away. I had to get rid of my brand new van that I had just bought. I had to leave the apartment that we were renting. I had to get rid of everything and start living off my credit cards and my savings account and my husband's salary. So once I started treatment for my FND, it was a holistic process of healing, which is the first time that I understood what a holistic trauma treatment plan really looked like. I had been in therapy for 15 years and just assumed that all therapists understood how to treat trauma. They don't, by the way. So as I started to explore some of my trauma, and I started to understand that I had very deep childhood trauma wounds that I had never addressed or even allowed myself to feel. I had deep anger towards my parents, especially my mom, who I felt rejected by. I didn't feel loved. I never felt safe. As I started to deal with these things, my health got worse before it got better. And at that point in my life, I was living in my RV. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I had nothing. And as my family was not showing the support that I really desperately needed and wanted, and our relationship was very toxic, every time that I would withdraw because I was sick and I needed help, they felt angry at me. I started to realize how toxic my relationship with my family was, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I felt really upset. I felt upset that they weren't supporting me. I felt upset that I wanted more. I felt so upset that it got to the point where my body was so physically ill anytime I would think about talking to my family or even having them in my life that I would physically pass out. That's when I knew that I had to do something drastic, and I didn't know what to do, and I was terrified. But deep down, I knew that I needed space. I knew that I needed to go no contact because I had tried to set boundaries. I had tried to express myself. I had tried all of these things and nothing was working. But I felt like a terrible person. Again, so my childhood trauma had said that I'm a terrible person, and here I am, and I'm like, I need space. Well, that makes you a terrible person. That was my inner narrative. It kept telling me all of these things. But eventually it got to the point where I knew I couldn't do it anymore. My body was physically deteriorating and I wasn't going to last much longer. And I had a small daughter that I needed to prioritize. So I made the decision to cut off my entire family. Just a note, if this video is resonating with you, make sure you subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Also would love to work with you. You can check out thecollectivehealers.com and explore the programs that I have, get a personalized human design reading from me, or learn how to biohack traumas so you can take the next step in your trauma healing journey. And for anybody that's going through this or even contemplating this, I just want to validate that it's one of the most difficult decisions that you will ever make. There's no easy way to do it. And there are a lot of people who will never understand. They will say, well, you just get one mom, or that's your family. Well, have you told them how you feel? If you're going no contact, you have done all of the things. So when I first went no contact, it was not good. I came from a family that is very dominant, that's very masculine. Here I am, a very sensitive person. I was a sensitive child. They bullied me for being sensitive as a child. So I really struggled with that. And here I am trying to stick up for myself. I didn't understand how to. Here I am, a person who's physically deteriorating. And I have no one. I have no support. I feel like cutting off your family is kind of like cutting off one of your extremities. It's like cutting off a limb. Nobody wants to do it. We do it because the pain of keeping it is far too much and we don't know how to handle it. And often what you do is when you cut the limb off, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. But you know that you have to in order to survive, in order to get ahead, in order to be okay. Once I did that, I was a mess for a long time. All I had was my therapist to talk to. Even in my relationship, my husband didn't understand and he couldn't even relate. He had no idea how to support me. And then I didn't even have a healthy attachment. We didn't even understand how to relate to each other. I felt completely and utterly alone. As I began to work with my trauma-informed therapist and understand all of the pain and all of the suffering that I had gone through as a child and feeling like I deserved better, I went through a period where I was frankly angry. I'll rewind just a little bit. There were years prior, even 5 years prior, where I went through this spiritual bypassing phase where I'm like, I'll just forgive and forget. Everything will be okay. Everything is love and light. I will be fine. I wasn't. The more that I didn't deal with that anger and that pain and that frustration and that hurt, the worse it made my body. It was physically living in my body and it was keeping me sick and it was keeping me ill. And then doctors would prescribe me medication to help with the inflammation. That is a symptom. It's not the root. So fast forward, I did the spiritual bypassing thing. It didn't work. So now to get to this point where I felt really guilty for feeling this anger, I had a wonderful therapist who helped me work through it. That's when I started exploring EMDR therapy, when I started to reprocess and understand the biological impact that the trauma has on your body. I started doing somatic healing. I started doing breath work. I started doing all of these things to heal the physical manifestations that trauma had had on my physical form. And that's when the unexpected happened. I had a spiritual awakening that I was not even trying. It all happened so suddenly as I began to peel away all of these layers, all of these things that had kept me trapped and not living as my true self. And as I started to really embrace my authenticity, embrace my sensitivity, and I started to love myself, anger started to go away too. I went through about 6 months of sheer downright anger. I was angry. I think it's needed. I think that when you go through trauma and you have those heavy emotions and you have felt all of those things and they have been trapped your entire life, you will go through a period where you will need to express that and to expel that into the world and send it back into the universe. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of manifestation teachers and gurus out there who will tell you good vibes only and happy vibes. I think it does a disservice, especially for people who have suffered from trauma, because when you don't release it and expel it back into the universe, it will stay trapped in your body. Because once you can release it and return it to love, that's when you can feel true love. That's when you can feel true gratitude. That's when you can feel absolute joy and happiness. And you might be able to start reconciling relationships. No kidding. Okay, so when I first got to the point where I had done enough work on my nervous system and my body, and I was not having triggers anymore to my mom especially, I never felt good enough for her. There was a lot of feelings attached to the memories of her, to the thoughts of her, There was a point in this growth journey where I was terrified to go outside the house. My PTSD from childhood was so strong, I was afraid to run into family. I was terrified. I felt trapped. And for me, part of my trauma was feeling trapped. There came a point in my healing journey when I didn't feel that anymore. And I was amazed. I never thought that feeling would go away. My anxiety had been so bad for my entire life. I couldn't imagine not living with constant anxiety. And there was a day when I'm like, it's gone. It's gone. I don't feel that trigger. I don't feel that anxiety. I don't feel that pain. That was because I expressed it and I released it and I healed my biology. I healed my body from the biological impact of trauma. Here's the thing, right? We are spiritual beings living a human existence. When you don't tie together the human and the spiritual and understand how they work together, you can't live your full potential. So as I started to release all of these things, I'm like, I think I could talk to my mom again. Not because I feel forced to, not because I need to, because I have to. One of the reasons was I wanted to reconcile the relationship because of my daughter. My family never hurt my daughter. They had emotionally hurt me. I knew that I had given her a strong enough foundation that they wouldn't hurt her like they had me, because mine had been emotional. It had purely come from a place of not knowing. And yes, it hurt very deeply. I also knew that I wanted her to be able to have that relationship because I had given her enough tools to know that they couldn't hurt her like they had hurt me. So there was one day where I'm like, I think I'm okay with that. And then as it progressed and I started to reach out slowly, one of the things that I did is I was firm on my boundaries, especially because of my neurological disorder. It was really easy for me to say, like, no, I'm not okay today, or no, this is too much for me. I was very adamant about I have come too far to jeopardize my health. I felt really good about setting these boundaries with people who I once did not feel comfortable expressing myself to. As I started to kind of slowly reach out, and I made sure that it was very slowly and on my terms, and I made it very clear, I will tell you if this is too much and I need you to respect that. I did. Here's the crazy thing. As I started to open up this relationship and mend these relationships, which I did not think was possible, I started to notice the shifts in them. Not only had I grown, but I noticed that my ability to make such a very difficult decision had prompted them to do some inner work and really evaluate some of the things that they were doing in life and some of the behaviors that they were doing. By no means did they become saints overnight, but I'm noticing the growth patterns in them and things that have changed. The ability of them to express themselves to each other, their ability to show love and affection, their ability to be more open, honest, and vulnerable. I'm not kidding when I say I never dreamed that would be possible. To me, in my head, when I ever even thought about reconciliation, I had come to terms with, like, I have to accept that these are people that are going to be toxic and they will never change. But that being said, there are no guarantees. And I share this because I want to give you hope. One, that you taking care of yourself is the best thing that you can do for yourself and for others. Think of yourself as a lighthouse. The brighter you shine, the more you shine for others, the more that light is shared with others. And that's how the collective awakening works, because when we are able to heal our bodies and we're able to heal ourselves, it ripples outwards because we are energy, and that energy grows outwards in ways that you cannot even imagine. So again, if you were going through parental estrangement, you're cutting off family, whatever that looks like, I want you to know to listen to your body. Do what's best for you with love. We are all responsible for ourselves, and we must respect ourselves and love ourselves enough sometimes to make some really difficult decisions. Doesn't mean that they're permanent, even if they feel like they need to be at this time. And maybe they are, and that's okay too. I truly believe as spiritual beings, we come here with these lessons that we want to learn. Sometimes they hurt. They are hard. They are difficult. And I remember recently I heard a shaman that was talking about, like, the worst thing you could do is cut off your family. Completely disagree. I had to save my own life. I wouldn't be alive if I had not done that because it was physically killing me. My sensitive nature, on top of trauma, on top of everything that I had endured in my life, it was too much. So if you have to make a choice between your survival and being able to function in this world and cutting off a limb, sometimes you have to make a really hard choice. And there are going to be a lot of people in this world who do not understand, and that's okay. When you do it from a place of love and self-preservation, I think there's a lot that spirit has to do with that as it guides you to becoming the fullest potential of yourself. And sometimes when you've experienced deep pain and deep trauma, you need that space in your life in order to be able to heal. So if this video resonated with you, I hope you will subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to check me out on Instagram and TikTok. In the meantime, I'm sending you so much love.